for today, I thought I would talk about Fredrik Backman's Beartown. So instead of talking about the whole book and doing a full review of it, I thought I would just look at the first chapter because, okay, you know when you're like at a bookstore, you're trying to decide if you want this book, so you look at the first chapter and you're like, is this good? Am I interested? Well, I thought instead of having to go in store and do that, because that's not really feasible right now, I would go through the first chapter here, talk about it a little bit, you know, give my thoughts, and hopefully it'll help you decide if you want to get the book or not. So, yeah. Chapter 1. Late one evening, toward the end of March, a teenager picked up a double-barreled shotgun, walked into the forest, put the gun to someone else's forehead, and pulled the trigger. This is the story of how we got there. So that's all of chapter 1. So I probably will look at chapter 2 as well, just because that's so short. But I think that is a beautiful example of a hook. So automatically, you know, it's intriguing. You've got a teenager, double-barreled shotgun, like, how'd they get the gun? Who are they shooting? What's happening? Like, you know, there's so many questions, and I think that's a beautiful hook. And I also think Fredrik Backman did an amazing job of making it broad enough that, you know, you don't know, okay, he says the end of March instead of saying a specific date. So you don't know what day it's coming when you read the book. You don't know which day is the day that we're hitting the end of March. And I think that's a really good way of being vague, but also still being interesting. So yeah, looking at chapter 2. Bang, 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 bang. It's a Friday in early March in Beartown, and nothing has happened yet. Everyone is waiting. Tomorrow, the Beartown Ice Hockey Club's junior team is playing in the semifinal of the biggest youth tournament in the country. How important can something like that be? In most places, not so important, of course, but Beartown isn't most places. Bang, 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 bang. The town wakes early, like it does every day. Small towns need a head start if they're going to have any chance in the world. The rows of cars in the parking lot outside the factory are already covered with snow. People are standing in silent lines with their eyes half open and their minds half closed, waiting for their electronic punch cards to verify their existence to the clocking in machine. They stamp the slush off their boots with autopilot eyes and answering machine voices while they wait for their drug of choice, caffeine or nicotine or sugar, to kick in and render their bodies at least tolerably functionable until the first break. Out on the road, the commuters set off for bigger towns beyond the forest. Their gloves slam against heating vents, and their curses are the sort you only think of uttering when you're drunk, dying, or sitting in a far too cold Peugeot far too early in the morning. Okay, so that's not all of chapter 2 at all, but I just wanted to take a moment and talk about that a little bit. So obviously it starts with bang, 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 which from the previous chapter you would think gunshots, like that's automatically what you're thinking. And so I think that's a really interesting thing, because, like, you know, obviously that like heightens it a bit. You're like, oh, and it also repeats throughout the chapter, so that's really interesting, because it creates this sound, and I think that's really powerful in you know, writing and stuff, when you can imagine a sound as well as like this visual picture of this town in early March, snow everywhere. So I think that's really powerful. And another thing I really noticed was that I think Fredrik Backman he's really good at being able to just put these moments of deep comment on human nature and society and what humans are, like, just says these things so fast, but they're so beautiful. So for example, that really struck me when he said, people are standing in silent lines with their eyes half open and their minds half, like, that's just a beautiful commentary about people and like not wanting to pay attention. Like, it's just so good. Like, they're like, you know, it's early in the morning. Like, I just think there's so many ways to read that. You could read it as a commentary like, oh, it's so early in the morning and, you know, like their minds are half closed because they're just like not paying attention. Or you could read it like their minds are half closed because, you know, like the stereotype about small town people not wanting to, like, you know, open their minds to like the greater society or whatever, which obviously is a stereotype, but it was an interesting, you know, commentary with a variety of ways to read it. Another example was when he said their drug of choice and talked about caffeine, nicotine, or sugar. And I thought that, again, was a beautiful way, because, I mean, like, that's the thing. Those are drugs, and we don't think of it like that. And I thought that was a really interesting way to put it. So I thought that was a beautiful, like, line. Yeah, and so, I mean, I just think there's a lot here. that's really beautiful, really powerful, and that I really enjoyed. Okay, continuing on with chapter 2. If they keep quiet, they can hear it in the distance. Bang, 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 bang. Maya wakes up and stays in bed playing her guitar. The walls of her room are covered in a mixture of pencil drawings and tickets she saved from concerts she's been to in cities far from here. Nowhere near as many as she would have liked, but considerably more than her parents actually consented to. She loves everything about her guitar. Its weight against her body, the way the wood responds when her fingertips tap it, the strings that cut hard against her skin, the simple notes, the gentle riffs. It's all a wonderful game to her. She's 15 years old and has already fallen in love many times, but a guitar will always be her first love. It's helped her put up with living in this town, to deal with being the daughter of the general manager of an ice hockey team in the forest. She hates hockey, but understands her father's love for it. The sport is just a different instrument from hers. Her mom sometimes whispers in her daughter's ear, "Never trust people who don't have something in their lives that they love beyond all reason." Her mom loves a man who loves a place that loves a game. This is a hockey town, and there are plenty of things you can say about those, but at least they're predictable. You know what to expect if you live here, day after day after day. Again, still not the end of chapter 2, but I think it's beautiful. I mean, okay, so one, it focuses more. So it goes from really broad, this town in general, to a specific person. But through this specific person, Maya, you find out that, you find out more about this town and the fact it's a hockey town. She's the daughter of the general manager. You know what to expect from a hockey town. Like, it's still a commentary on the town as a whole. And I mean, I think that's really beautiful. And I just think, gosh, I mean, like the whole line the mom says, never trust people who don't have something in their lives that they love beyond all reason. I mean, that is just so powerful and such just a great line that you're like, interesting. It makes you think. It makes you stop and think. And I mean, I just think that, like, this is giving you a really good idea of what the rest of the book is like. I read the rest of the book, and I mean, I think this second chapter is actually a great reflection of that. Okay. Bang. Beartown isn't close to anything. Even on a map, the place looks unnatural, as if a drunk giant tried to piss his name in the snow, some might say, as if nature and man were fighting a tug-of-war for space, more high-minded souls might suggest. Either way, the town is losing. It has been a very long time since it won at anything. More jobs disappear each year, and with them the people, and the forest devours 1 or 2 more abandoned houses each season. Back in the days when there were still things to boast about, the city council erected a sign beside the road at the entrance to the town with the sort of slogan that was popular at the time. Beartown, leaves you wanting more. The wind and snow took a few years to wipe out the word more. Sometimes the entire community feels like a philosophical experiment. If a town falls in the forest but no one hears it, it doesn't matter at all. To answer that question, you need to walk a few hundred yards down the lake. The building you see there doesn't look like much, but it's an ice rink. Built by factory workers 4 generations ago, men who worked 6 days a week and needed something to look forward to on the 7th. All the love this town could throw out was passed down and still seems to end up devoted to the game. Ice and boards, red and blue lines, sticks and pucks, and every ounce of determination and power and young bodies hurtling at full speed into the corners in the hunt for those pucks. The stands are packed every weekend, year after year, even though the team's achievements have collapsed in line with the town's economy. And perhaps that's why, because everyone hopes that when the team's fortunes improve again, the rest of the town will get pulled up with it. This is why places like this always have to pin their hopes for the future on young people. They're the only ones who don't remember that things actually used to be better. That can be a blessing. So they've coached their junior team with the same values their forebears used to construct their community. Work hard, take the knocks, don't complain, keep your mouth shut, and show the bastards in the big cities where we're from. There's not much worthy of note around here, but anyone who's been here knows that it's a hockey town. Wow. I don't know if you feel the power of Fredrik Backman's writing and if it hits you the way it hits me, but the philosophy major in me, it's just so good. I mean, I think there's like, honestly, if I was writing a philosophy paper, I think there's a lot here that you could explore. I mean, it's just this whole thing where there's a sign that says Beartown leaves you wanting more and more disappears, so Beartown leaves you wanting. I mean, that's funny. Like, that's humorous. That nature itself, by blowing the wind down and knocking down the sign, is causing it to say Beartown leaves you wanting, just like nature is taking these houses and, as it said, like, you know, expanding and consuming these houses, and it slowly is shrinking the town. And so, I mean, I think it just shows the power of nature throughout the story. I mean, the power of snow, the power of, you know, just human nature as well as like environmental nature. And I mean, I just think it's beautiful and it's powerful and it's funny. I mean, I just think that, you know, he provides a lot of like commentary on people through this commentary on this town. And I mean, I think the town is like a reflection of the individual. Okay, I'm getting way too like English major reading this. Let me just continue reading. Okay, bang. Ahmet will soon turn 16. His room is so tiny that if it had been in a larger apartment in a well-to-do neighborhood in a big city, it would barely have registered as a closet. The walls are completely covered with posters of NHL players, with 2 exceptions. One is a photograph of himself, age 7, wearing gloves that are too big for him, and with his helmet halfway down his forehead, the smallest of all the boys on the ice. The other is a sheet of white paper on which his mother has written parts of a prayer. When Ahmet was born, she lay with him on her chest in a narrow bed in a little hospital on the other side of the planet. No one but them in the whole world. A nurse had whispered the prayer in his mother's ear back then. It is said to have been written on the wall above Mother Teresa's bed, and the nurse hoped it would give the solitary woman strength and hope. Almost 16 years later, the scrap of paper is still hanging on her son's wall. The words mixed up, but she wrote them down as well as she could remember them. If you are honest, people may deceive you. Be honest anyway. If you are kind, people may accuse you of selfishness. Be kind anyway. All the good you do today will be forgotten by others tomorrow. Do good anyway. Amat sleeps with his skates by his bed every night. Must have been one hell of a birth for your poor mother, you being born with those on, the caretaker at the rink often jokes. He's offered to let the boy keep them in a locker in the team's storeroom, but Amat likes carrying them there and back, wants to keep them close. Amat has never been as tall as the other players, has never been as muscular as them, has never shot as hard, but no one in the town can catch him. No one on any team he's encountered so far has been as fast as him. He can't explain it. He assumes it's a bit like when people look at a violin and some of them just see a load of wood and screws where others see music. Skates never felt odd to him. On the contrary, when he sticks his feet in a pair of normal shoes, he feels like a sailor stepping ashore. The final lines his mother wrote on the sheet of paper on his wall read as follows. What you create, others can destroy. Create anyway. Because in the end, it is between you and God. It was never between you and anyone else anyway. Immediately below that, written in red crayon in the determined handwriting of a primary school student, it says, "They say I'm too little to play. Become good player anyway." Bang. So there's one paragraph left in the chapter, but I just want to stop and just say, okay, I love this book. I'm getting emotional. I mean, it's just so good. So what I really liked about this part and what I think is really interesting and really, will help you decide if you're interested in this kind of book. Well, one, the writing style itself. Like, either you're interested in this or you're like, I'm annoyed. I understand. But I thought it was really, really cool that, like, while he's talking about Amat, similar to when he was talking about Maya, it's about the environment where they live. Like, they're talking about her with the guitar and the, tickets on her wall and the posters, and they're talking about the posters and this thing that his mom wrote, and this, like, all of this stuff, and it's the environment and how it reflects that person. Like, you don't hear from a lot, like, it's a beautiful way of characterization. It's a beautiful way of saying how an environment reflects a person. And I mean, that's what the whole story is about. It's about how this town shapes the individual. And I mean, I think he does a really good job of not just showing that in this chapter. This chapter is all about the town, but also showing how the individuals are shaped by their environment. And I just think it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. Backman knows what he's doing. I don't know what to say. Okay, this is the end. Actually, there's 2 more paragraphs, but it's not long. Once upon a time, Beartown, ice hockey's A team, 1 step above the juniors, was second best in the top division in the country. That was more than 2 decades and 3 divisions ago, but tomorrow Beartown will be playing against the best once more. So how important can a junior game be? How much can a town care about the semifinal a bunch of teenagers are playing in a minor league tournament? Not so much, of course, if it weren't this particular dot on the map. A couple of 100 yards south of the road sign lies the Heights, a small cluster of expensive houses with views across the lake. The people who live in them own supermarkets, run factories, or commute to better jobs in bigger towns where their colleagues at staff parties wonder, wide-eyed, Beartown? How can you possibly live that far out in the forest? They reply something about hunting and fishing, proximity to nature, but these days almost everyone is asking themselves if it is actually possible living here any longer, asking themselves if there's anything left apart from property values that seem to fall as rapidly as the temperature. Then they wake up to the sound of a bang and they smile. So that's the end of chapter 2. And I think it's a powerful end. It leaves you wondering. You're like, wait, so what is this bang? You know, what's this bang that's uniting them and motivating them? And I think that's a really good, like, cliffhanger for the 2nd chapter. Do you know what I mean? Like, it wants you to keep reading. But I also think, like, at this point, like, I was invested in this town. I wanted to read more about this town. So I think this book's really good if you are into explorations of, like, towns themselves and the way that towns can be almost like people, have characteristics and how they shape people. I mean, I think it's really good about that. And also explorations of people themselves. I mean, I would argue that this book isn't as plot-based. I mean, it is. There's a plot. Like, you've got this game coming up and, like, stuff happens. I'm not saying it's no plot whatsoever, but it's largely based off the characters and how they interact with each other and how they are a reflection of this town, Beartown, that they live in. And I mean, I think it's really good and really powerful. So if, you know, hearing the 1st chapter, which was really 2 chapters because the 1st chapter was like 3 lines, but I hope this helped you decide if you're interested in this book, if Fredrik Backman's writing style is for you, because I know writing styles are different for everyone. Like, you know, you like some things, you don't like others. Okay, I also wanted to add that I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I stayed up until 3 a.m. reading it, and there are quite a few content warnings that I would warn about, especially one in particular. It's a huge spoiler for the book though, so I don't want to put it here, but if you are interested, message me or check out my Instagram. That's probably the easiest way. And I can tell you what those content warnings are. If there's certain topics that you don't want to read about and you're worried about that, you can either just ask me if it has those in it, or I can tell you. That's totally fine. But I do want you to know that there are some dark contents in this book, and that I don't want you to go in and be completely surprised and hurt and have to re-experience something that you don't want to. So yeah, definitely message me and I can let you know. So I hope this helped you decide. So yeah, let me know if it helped, and if there's anything I can do in the future that would, you know, help you decide better and, like, you know, that kind of thing. I'm always looking to improve. So yeah, thank you for listening and watching. This is a podcast. Okay. Thank you. But yeah, I hope to see you later, I guess.